Second, insurance. The third is investment through public-private partnerships, PPPs, a buzzword that many people can relate to. And this, I think, is an opportunity for an audience such as this, for the diaspora. Oftentimes we come and we talk only about what can we get. And I'm suggesting that in healthcare, it's a multi-million, billion, if you're talking in Jamaican dollars, industry, where the provision of critical services represents significant opportunities, not just for charity, but also for investment. And in our restructuring and our strategic examination of the industry, we're going to have to look at how we provide and profile investment opportunities for any investor to come in and to enhance, by so doing, the provision of public health services. I'll give you one example. Take the provision of diagnostics for persons wanting a CT scan or diagnostic equipment of one form or another, or services. I am not convinced that the public health system can secure and can maintain diagnostic equipment better than the private sector. I'm not convinced of that, okay? I mean, I used to be chairman of a diagnostics company, Elite Diagnostics in Jamaica, for a few years, and I understand how these machines work to a certain extent. And if you don't have them in in temperature control rooms, if you're not managing it properly with surge protectors and so on, and you have a power surge, when it's time to maintain, these are a couple million US in some instances equipment. And I just, in understanding the principles of private motivation versus public sector culture, unfortunately, feel that a partnership has to be forged between the public and the private sector in securing more efficient diagnostic services for the public health system. Because I believe the private sector would benefit in that they would fill existing or excess capacity with the public where they can't do it with the private. And secondly, they're going to take better care of the equipment because they understand the profit motive and understand that if they don't, it's going to be at their expense and their business. And so in a number of areas, particularly for outpatient care, but in some instances, even for inpatient care, by making provisions at the site of a location, meaning a hospital, for a private enterprise to be established, and by so doing, contract them at a better price or discounted price, of course, than if you were on the market doing it privately. For diagnostic services to be provided, to me, makes a lot of sense, and is something that we need to incorporate more substantially in the review and in the new approach to moving forward. And that, to me, is a classic case of public-private, and that also clearly will subsidize the provision of healthcare given the limited budgetary allocation that we have as a country. The other, of course, is physical infrastructure. We have these hospitals, many of them need upgrading, physical plant, and frankly speaking, there are a number of opportunities for private wings to be established in the public institutions. And if there are investors who are interested in that, that's something we're willing to talk about and we're exploring. So the public-private partnership represents, to my mind, another approach to financing. And the third one, of course, is the one that you are always willing to participate in. You have championed that cause. And that, of course, is philanthropy, that is charities, that is your medical missions and so on that you have played such a key role in. 200 or so last year, approximating, I've asked them to look at it, they're saying about 3 billion Jamaican dollars, 20, 30 million US value in terms of what these missions have contributed. Some are, and a number of local ones too, because we have a number of local foundations. The country values that. 3 billion Jamaican in a 52 billion budget is not anything to sneeze on. My view is that we could double that. When I assess what is being done and what can be done, I think we could double that. How? We can make it easier for these missions to come and to deliver these services. And so part of that review is going to be, and we've already taken the decision actually, to improve the secretariat within the ministry that is going to interface with these missions or interested groups who wants to come to Jamaica to deal with things like the customs and the shipping and the regular hurdles that you have to cross before you get to Jamaica, but also to help you to appreciate where the gaps are. So one of the things that we're going to be doing is to do the needs assessment in a more deliberate way and make those results available to all and sundry, everybody. So you know that what we need is this particular type of service if it's a professional service that is being administered. You know that what we need is this kind of equipment, is that kind of medication, is that kind of diagnostic. So in a sense, you're going to get better particulars which will generate greater satisfaction that you're contributing to where the need is greatest, and at the same time, of course, administering a service that is really badly needed in the country. And so whether we do that once every year or otherwise, we're going to make that very, very pronounced, whether through our medical missions, through groups like yours, or otherwise, so that you know exactly where those needs are. We have a program that we want to launch, which I'm going to preview here in the coming months. And you will be an important part of that, but not just you, but Jamaicans in Jamaica. We have 320 primary healthcare facilities in Jamaica for public health administration. And of course, the relationship between primary health and secondary is very important. Part of the reason why the hospitals are so crowded is because everybody rushes to the hospital because they see it as a one-stop shop for everything. And the clinics are all over the place, but they rarely have a doctor, once a week, that sort of thing. So people, the credibility of the primary healthcare facilities is undermined, compromised. So people don't bother to go there. They go to the hospital. And then it creates this huge backlog. So the question is, how do we improve the facilities of these primary care facilities? Now, my experience in my limited time as a member of parliament and then health minister is that a lot of the missions that come and conduct clinics have links to the communities that they administer. You know, there's a sense, you have to go back into your town in St. Mary, in Clarendon, wherever the clinic is there. It gives you a lot of pride that you go back and you contribute to where you grew up, that sort of thing. Others go wherever the need is. Both are important. So what we have done, I've asked them to pull 100 of the 320 clinics strategically positioned around the country. Profile those facilities in terms of what it requires to maintain them in a given year. Maintenance excluding personnel. So the ministry will still administer the personnel, the doctors and the nurses and so on. So the standards are going to be maintained, uniformed, that sort of thing. And this doesn't burden anybody to do that outside of us. But those facilities need equipment each year. They need a coat of paint each year. They need a TV so people can put in the waiting area. And we want to launch what we call an Adopt a Clinic program. And basically what that means is that we're saying to persons who have an interest, who feel inclined so to do, this is the profile of this clinic in Kitson Town. It costs $3,000 a year to maintain it, or $4,000 US. If you, your organization, or your family, because of one reason or the other, wants to adopt this clinic, we will put a little plaque on the wall that this is adopted by the Williams family from so and so and so. This is the cost of maintaining that clinic per year. You work with us to do that. We provide the service. At the end of the year, you get a report. This clinic has seen 10,000 people over the last year. This is the procedures that does administered. This is what we... So we're going to be launching that initiative. I'm giving you the framework of it. We're going to work out the details. And we're going to invite persons in the diaspora to look at where they can align themselves. Now, if it's $3,000 to maintain it for the year, that is just a nice dinner party with you and your friends one evening, right? And some white rum or some red wine. So it's possible. But it also gives you the satisfaction that you're not just coming as a one event, but you're supporting the sustainability of the facility over an extended period. When you go back to Jamaica, you can hug up your plaque and your thing and take a picture because it's your clinic. And that have a little satisfaction too, right? I think so. So what we're trying to do is to create ownership. Every Jamaican wants to return to Jamaica, Not everyone does, but all of us do when we are away. I remember I can speak too because I used to be a Diaspora member too. And it's a good feeling if that relationship can be established. So in a sense, we're going to leverage a little of that sentimentality while at the same time doing a great cause for the good of those critical communities. So that's a critical area. But obviously, there are other areas of charity work that can be done. You are involved in a lot of them. There's a program that we want to get back into, which is dental hygiene, oral hygiene, where we need to target, again, persons at a young age in the school system and get them to develop a culture, a habit, a lifestyle of good hygiene generally and good oral hygiene particularly. And I've been talking to a particular charity, a large one, about developing this kit. A little toothpaste, a little toothbrush, a little soap. Once upon a time we used to do it. You go into the school system and you give the kids, and while you do that, you have a little thing in there you can pin up on the wall. This is how you brush your teeth, you wash your hand. Because as we will determine, communicable diseases, vector-borne diseases, H1N1, hygiene-related diseases are becoming a greater threat, not just to our society, but societies generally, climate change, all of that. We have to get our people at a very early age to start buying into how they treat with themselves and how they interface with their environment. And I think the school system has to be linked inextricably to what we do in public health administration. So that is going to come too. And that's an area I think you can play a part in. In fact, I'm prepared to announce that I'm looking for a dental mobile clinic if anybody wants to donate. We have one. Okay, good. We can talk about it, all right? We have one that we just got from Colgate. I got one local philanthropist to donate one. I'm looking for another because we didn't have any up to 3 months ago. No, I mean in the government system. So what we want to do is to set them out on a track throughout the country to visit with every school. And in a sense, they become a showpiece because they're not big enough to administer the entire school. But the next thing we need is to get that kit. If we can find a source, and I'm talking to Food for the Poor, but if we have other sources, that kit with a little toothbrush, a little toothpaste, a cake of soap, a little thing in there about how you brush your teeth with pictures and so on, and we go around, I'd love to give every child in every school, or at least a critical cohort, we have about 45,000 per cohort, in the school system so that they bring that home. And over time, hopefully, they acquire that practice as an important part of the preventative healthcare measure. Now, for me, the challenge, and I'm winding down, Madam Chairperson, 10 more minutes, and I'll 10 or 5? 5? 5? 5 to 10, okay. I'm following Madam Chairperson. The approach to administering healthcare in Jamaica outside of financing to get the best benefit, I believe, is firstly it's twofold. Firstly, it is about preventative healthcare, I don't think as a country we have done enough to promote prevention as opposed to cure. Oftentimes when we argue over the facilities, the hospitals, the beds, the equipment, it's the curative side that we're talking about. But the curative side would be a lot more sufficient if we focused a lot more on the preventative side. What do I mean? I mean, if you look at the death rate in Jamaica, we have about 17,000 deaths a year, right? 73% of those are from non-communicable diseases. The strokes, heart attacks, the hypertension, the obesity issues. The Caribbean, Jamaica included, has one of the highest obesity rates in this part of the world. And the challenge is that a lot of that is really about lifestyle. It's about consumption habits, and frankly speaking, we have had a historical perspective to deal with, to justify how we eat what we eat and so on. But we have to shift that. It's about consumption habits. It's about inactivity. So to my mind, any public health program that you embark on has to place emphasis across the board, but in the early stages of one's life to encourage healthier living. Your course meal, taking activities. So we're going to be launching some programs. We're beefing up the secretariat, the group within the ministry to do that. If you follow me on this social media thing, you'll see me running all over the place and acting like I'm a young boy, right? But I do it normally. I'm just exposing it no more as a health minister, because I believe we must live by example. But we're going to be launching this Jamaica Moves concept, which is going to tap into the physical activity around the country using existing groups and trying to expand those groups. And what we're saying to people, the universal exercise is walking. I mean, unless you're in a wheelchair, everybody can walk, right? And we're saying to people, where you don't have to drive, walk. Or find a little time each day to do a little walking. Because it's going to improve the quality of your life, and it's going to reduce your cost of healthcare, and by extension, the cost in the public sector. Because we're the ones who have to deal with some of those ailments later on. And the same for consumption. So we're going to spend some time on that. The second part, of course, now is the communicable and non-communicable. On the communicable side, it's about vector control primarily. Because that's where we're confronting the ZIKV and the chikungunya and the yellow fever possibilities and so on. Jamaica has an outbreak now of ZIKV. And that is the case because we have never had that virus before, so we are totally exposed. The first case was discovered by someone who traveled into Jamaica with it, a Jamaican. And as expected, in the 60 countries throughout the world that has it, it's spreading like wildfire. Even the US here is trying to contemplate. There are two critical problems we have. Half the people who have it won't know that they have it. 1% will have it severely. And those who have it severely will either have, if they're a mother, expecting microcephaly, which is the small-headed babies, which would be a disaster. We have 2 pregnant women in Jamaica now who have had ZIKV in their first 2 trimesters, so we're observing that. We suspect we will have more. And of course, the Guillain-Barré syndrome, which is paralysis. Now, if that goes up to your upper body, I'm told you need intensive care, you need a ventilator. It can actually kill you because you can't breathe on your own. So we are preparing the public health system to deal with that. But frankly speaking, until we have the virus spread across the system, the country, it's estimated by WHO that once you're having it for the first time, you could have up to 70% of the population with it. Then after that, you build up the resistance and it becomes less pronounced. But to deal with the communicables, H1N1 included, which is not vector-borne, as you know, it's hygiene-related. And H1N1 is mutating now. I don't think it's going to be H1N1 again. It's something else, which means vaccines have to change. It means that we have to spend more time on how we treat with ourselves in our environment. And that's why I spoke about the need to deal with the issues in the schools to help young people to develop. On the non-communicable side, the hospital system is under stress because of the various forms of ailments. That's why you have long waiting lines at the emergency rooms. And what we're trying to do as a policy, through the Adopter Clinic program and other forms of upgrading of the primary health facility, is to move people from the emergency rooms back into the clinics. You know, when you go to an emergency room, you get one of 3 color-coded cards. You get a red, which means emergency, see right away. You get a yellow, which is serious but not so serious. And if you get the green, and I don't know why they use the green for the long wait, you know, but it wasn't invented in my time, right? The green means that you could be waiting for 5 or 6 hours or longer, because it means you're not essential. And my approach is, okay, frankly speaking, the green shouldn't exist, because the man with the green should be in the clinic to get some care. So we're going to expand the opening hours in some of the clinics that are closely located to the hospitals. And we're going to use the triaging process to redirect people into that. But there are other causes of wait. There is the cause of diagnostics, which is why the PPP is important. People wait a long time to get a CAT scan and so on. There is a cause of operation, so the theaters. We're talking to the Surgeons Association to have a 24-hour cycle, which means that we have to improve the emergency rooms. Better lighting. There's a cost of the shortage of personnel to do that too. This country recruits a lot of our nurses. I'm sure you have a nurse in the room somewhere who was trained in Jamaica. The last recruitment agencies that came to Jamaica a month or so ago, I hear they were offering up to £45,000 for an intensive care nurse to go to Europe, to go to the UK. Clearly we can't compete with that. So one of the things that we'll be doing is looking at training more, but we need the clinical beds for the practical side. So we're going to try and partner. We're trying to recruit and call back into service retired nurses. And I'd like to speak to some of these agencies, frankly speaking, and ask them if they can't do a deal where the people come here, but they give us 3 months in Jamaica so that we don't lose them entirely. I'm sure a lot of people would want to come back to Jamaica for 3 months out of a year and still benefit. So we're going to look at some of those creative ways, but that's another big issue. Ladies and gentlemen, I close by saying that healthcare is a challenging area, but it's possible to make it much better. We have some of the best people who work under very adverse circumstances, and we must accept that. We have facilities that are not where they ought to be, but it's a clear issue for the most part of financing, and we need to improve on that. So the idea is to restructure with levels of accountability, including the regional health authorities, which I think sometimes has too many duplications, and we need to rethink that. Focus on prevention, lifestyle related, to improve or reduce the risk of the curative requirements. Get stakeholder participation in the administration process, not just the government, but all concerned, the insurance companies, everyone. And finally, we need to restore in the public health system what I consider a process of compassionate care in public health administration. I think because the system is so challenged, because it is so stressed, there is a perception around the administration of public health that suggests that it is callous and it lacks the sensitivities that are linked to rehabilitation. I mean, a doctor who sees 100 patients a day, by the time you reach 70, they start to tell people, go sit down over there, so and don't, you know. There's a level of him, you know, it appears cruel, even though you know the doctor is under stress. And so one of the things that we'll be doing is, as I tell people, it's not just about the science of medicine. It's about the psychology of medicine. People rehabilitate better if they are in the frame of mind, separate and apart from the medical procedure that is administered. And so what we'll be doing, we're reviewing the voluntarism policy within the administration of public health, which will adjust visiting hours and which will seek to mobilize volunteers to go into the system, to access the system under appropriate supervision, and not necessarily administer medical procedures. So, you could have a diaspora mission that comes down and decide that what you're going to do is spend a week in the hospital and read stories to the patients, comb the ladies here, make a cup of coffee because it helps the process. It helps the well-being of the individual. And it paints a different picture from what now exists for the most part in terms of how we administer healthcare. So there's a lot to be done. You can play a critical role, as I've outlined, a number of areas, both on the investment and on the volunteerism side. And I look forward to working with you. Thank you very much.